Jeff and Susan arrived at the entrance to their driveway in the cream Rover. Susan got out and pushed open the white wooden gates to let the car through. Then Jeff drove in and parked beside the house, yanking the handbrake on stiffly before stepping out. They walked along the paving stone path, still mildly grinning at each other, Susan's thigh-high leather boots clumping on the stone. She squatted down and lifted the doormat. There was no key. She reached her arm toward Jeff with a beckoning gesture. Jeff, his hands full of milk bottles, shifted them to one hand and pressed a set of keys into her palm. Susan turned the key in the Yale lock and opened the door. "Jeff!" she shouted in a high-pitched voice. They stared into the house. In the hallway, tables lay upturned, cabinets tipped over, books scattered across the floor, picture frames smashed, stools lying on their sides. Bloody handprints and streaks of deep red blood marked the walls. One of the short axes was missing from its bracket. They stood frozen in shock. Jeff held a milk bottle in each hand. Susan's leather handbag dangled loosely from her wrist. "Joan!" they both shouted, in unison, at the top of their voices. A bloody hand began to emerge from behind the plasterboard, about 20 feet away, creeping slowly around the corner, 3 feet off the ground. They heard the sound of sobbing. Joan appeared gradually from around the corner, on her knees, gripping the wall to steady herself as she willed herself upright. She was battered and bruised, her clothes torn. She staggered and fell into Susan's arms as Susan rushed forward to catch her. Jeff grabbed the telephone from the small table nearby. The police were soon on their way, blue lights flashing, sirens wailing. "Surely just 1 minute," the plain-clothed inspector demanded, his face contorted, his tie loose and bulging over his check-patterned shirt beneath a dark blue suit. "The answer must be no," said the tall, distinguished doctor in the white coat, his voice steady and firm. Through the doorway, 2 orderlies laid Joan's limp body down on a hospital bed. "Half a minute, then?" the inspector pleaded, softer now. "No. Look, you're doing your job, doctor. I'm just trying to do mine," the inspector said, pointing at his own chest. She saw the man. She must have. "Maybe she can give us a description?" "Not now, please. Look, doctor." The inspector gestured them both out into the corridor. Once outside, he raised his voice. "If we don't catch him, he'll do it again." He stared directly at the tall man in white, challenging him. "Potential victims are your concern," the doctor answered robustly. "Mine is that girl." The inspector paused, realizing there was no compromise. "I'll be back tomorrow then," he said, and walked briskly away. The doctor called after him. The inspector stopped and looked back. "Don't you realize it's her mind that's affected? The state she's in, she may never make any sense." "I'll be back tomorrow," the inspector muttered under his breath and walked away. Joan lay unconscious on the hospital bed, freshly sedated. The tall doctor came in to check on her, leaning over the bed. Her eyes were open, but she didn't see the doctor. She saw the blond man looking down at her. "Take the man away," she whimpered, sobbing, gripping her pillow. "Take the bad man away." The doctor stepped back and whispered instructions to a nurse. Meanwhile, back at the house, Susan knelt in the hallway, cleaning up the wreckage, scooping broken glass, a vacuum cleaner beside her, some furniture still tipped over. The big cream telephone on the small table began to ring. Susan looked up with concern. Jeff, his checked shirt collar hanging open, walked over and picked up the handset. "Yes, I see. Thank you for ringing," he said, subdued. Susan looked up at him from her knees, worry on her face. He placed the phone back on the hook. "It's the hospital," he said quietly. "No change." Back at the hospital, Joan lay quietly now in a pretty floral gown, awake, her eyes distant. The inspector stood at the foot of her bed, his expression friendlier than the day before, his tie now tighter and neater. "Miss Stevens," he said, quietly and gently. She stared, but did not respond. He leaned in close. "Look, I just want to find the man." He tried a grin. She stared at him, wide-eyed, almost like an innocent child. "The bad man," he continued, nodding gently. "The man you've been talking about. You're going to help me find—" His voice trailed off. He tried again. "Miss Stevens, you don't have to be frightened of me. I'm a police officer." He drew his ID from his jacket and held it just inches from her eyes. "See?" The card bore an emblem, the words County Police, names, numbers, and a signature. Joan seemed to relax a little. She slowly lifted her head to look at the man holding the card, and saw the blonde man. The bad man. She let out a hysterical scream of anguish. The inspector shrank back, bewildered. The doctor rushed in and ordered him out at once. Joan carried on screaming.